Welcome everyone to another episode of Conversations with Jen. Now, you won't be able to tell from the setting, but I'm actually in a different part of the world completely, and I have a very special guest for today's show. Please introduce yourself to the people, them.
Okay, so hi, thanks for having me. I am Danniellia, and this is Jamaica.
We're in Jamaica. So, of course, on my show, I very much speak about everybody's experience living with sickle cell or people who have been impacted by sickle cell, what that's been like for them. So you are someone that lives with sickle cell, of course, in Jamaica. So what I really want to know is what your experience was like growing up. And then maybe people that are watching can kind of see what the differences or similarities may be from in the UK. So just to start with, what's your kind of HB status, if you're SS or SC, and did your parents know that you were going to have sickle cell, or what was that whole kind of thing like for you?
So HBSS, full blown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is what it is. My parents knew that my dad had the trait.
Okay.
But mom did the test, came back negative.
Oh.
Yeah, so the test was a false negative at first. And then when I was born, they're like, oh, but you have sickle cells. So she had to do over the test, found out that she had the trait as well.
At what stage did they find out that you had sickle cell, when you were born or like months later?
Because in Jamaica, every baby is tested at birth.
Okay.
Which is the beauty of it here, is that we're all screened. So every baby in Jamaica is screened for sickle cell disease.
Has that screening process been in place for a long time? Do you know?
I have no idea. I think that would be a better question for probably
a professional.
Yeah,
I will find out.
I know that that's something that happens, and because of that, we found out early. So all my life, I've had it. I don't know myself without it.
Okay. And your kind of childhood experience growing up with sickle cell, what was that like? Did you have many crises, many complications?
No, I was pretty healthy, and I think that's because my mom's paranoid. If I had the cold, I was at the hospital. If my hip started hurting, I was on crutches. It was bizarre. Some of the stuff were very bizarre. I remember in high school, I was in a wheelchair for a week, and that wasn't because I had to be in a wheelchair. That was because she took it as a precaution. Okay,
so any signs of pain or anything, it was more like, okay, let's just prevent whatever's going to develop. That's actually, I mean, to me, it seems like it's a good thing, but did that impact your kind of schooling? Like, what was the perception of other people, or how were people towards you when you were in those situations?
I didn't talk about it, so I wouldn't know. During high school, which is funny, so I'm advocating for it now, but during high school or most of my life, I spent not talking about sickle cell. People would know that I'm sick, but they wouldn't know why.
So people would know that you're sick, see you in a wheelchair or on crutches, but there was no explanation, no...
I didn't give explanations. Most of my teachers didn't know. Yeah.
What was is there a reason for that? Was that more your preference, or it wasn't necessary?
I just felt like I didn't look like everybody else. At that time, I had a huge stomach because my spleen was enlarged for most of my high school life. Mm-hmm. So I had a large spleen. My eyes were very yellow. Mm-hmm. So persons just assumed that I had several things, and I just let them run with it. It wasn't let me defend it, or let me talk about it. No, I just didn't care to give answers.
Did that impact you in any way, or have you always had this kind of don't care, not really forced attitude?
No, it did impact me. I think I hid it because I felt like I was abnormal.
Right.
So it was more hiding and not necessarily don't care. Because I do care. And I did care about the fact that persons kept talking about it, but it is what it is.
Exactly. So in terms of, I mean, we already kind of got to secondary school. You mentioned that your spleen was enlarged. What happened with that? Did it just go down? Did you have to have a splenectomy?
I had a splenectomy in 2010.
Well, how old were you? 2010.
Girl, when I remember.
You don't remember how old you were when you had the surgery?
I don't.
Okay, 10 years ago. Anyway.
Yeah, probably 20.
In your 20s?
Maybe not. I was
teens?
I don't remember. Probably 17, 18. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't remember.
What was that experience like over here?
It was bittersweet. I had the best medical care, which is also something that my parents invested in. So I get the best medical care possible. But we went in thinking that I could get a scar under my rib so it wouldn't show.
Okay.
I came out with a scar from the rib, the last rib going down to my navel, little bit past my navel. Yeah. When they took it out, I had a mini fetus, pretty much.
Wow.
So it was huge.
It was
so
really big.
I left my spleen for UA students to study on because it was very large, abnormally large, considering that I was still alive.
Oh my gosh. And was that done under an emergency situation? Like you mentioned how large it must have got to a stage where it had to come out.
I was in the hospital, so I did most of my CXC subjects from the hospital because of that situation.
CXC is what age? So because most of the audience is from the UK, so that would be like
That would be like my high school exams.
Right,
So
okay.
high school exams before we get to college,
Yes.
we do CSEC exams.
Okay, so for us that's like GCSEs.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Pretty much.
Wow.
Yes, I did most of that from the hospital because my spleen was out of control.
No way.
I had transfusions. That wasn't helping because, you know, once the blood is
goes in,
lodged, it's not coming out. So it
has to
kept
come out.
growing. And so I had to just do a surgery. I was very much against it. I was praying that the spleen would just go down by itself, but it is what it is. And that's been my only surgery.
Only surgery. Has that been your only complication that you've had with sickle cell? Or have you had any other issues? So I know there are a plethora of complications that come with this condition, acute chest syndrome, strokes in children, all of those kind of things. Have you experienced any other kind of serious complications?
Chest sequestration. I had infection around my kidney at one point, but I've had no liver damage, no kidney damage, no stroke, no hip replacement. So it's been a miraculous journey. But yeah, so I think that was the major complication for me.
In terms of the healthcare in Jamaica, for you, what has that been like? Because I know that for a lot of people, of course, I now spend a lot of time here, and a lot of people want to know, like, oh my gosh, you're crazy because the healthcare is probably not going to be the same. It's probably expensive because it's not like the UK where you have an NHS service. What's that been like for you, your experience? Is it expensive, or is it just you just pay for what you have to?
It's expensive, but I pay for what I have to. I mean, healthcare, especially for us, because we don't get health benefits, or if you don't work at a company that gives you a health card, we can't just sign up for a health card because we're high risk. And because of the high risk that we carry, medical care is exorbitantly expensive.
Do you think you get what you pay for, though?
I do private, so yeah.
You do? So as in paying for private makes a difference? Like you feel
It makes a difference to me because the chances of you treating me bad versus public, and some persons cannot afford to do private, and so they have to deal with what system is. But the chances of you mistreating me while I'm sick is very slim. And so I'd pay any day for better treatment because I'm sick. I don't need you to stress me out on top of that. So, yeah.
And even though you pay for private, because I know that there are specialists in Jamaica.
Yeah.
So do they kind of communicate with the private hospital, or does kind of the private hospital know and understand a little bit about sickle cell and how to treat you?
So most of my specialists come from sickle cell unit.
Right.
Andrews also has a specialist that deals with some of our complications.
So they're aware.
So they're a little bit aware. So specialists are hard to find when it comes on to us, but it makes it a little bit easier when you go private.
So you mentioned, of course, you being in school and in secondary school, etc. You didn't tell people that you had sickle cell? This wasn't like something that you went around boasting and sharing with everyone, but I came across you because you were speaking about your journey, the condition, and spreading awareness about sickle cell, which, you know, is something that I'm very passionate about. So talk to me about when you started your advocacy journey almost. What happened? What motivated you? And yeah, just, I want to know.
I think the year would have been 2019.
Right.
To be very exact. In 2019, I had a book release. So in the book, I would talk about sickle cell, I'd talk about other journey, but sickle cell was a chapter by itself. In that same year, we did the documentary for Sickle Cell Unit. Okay. That was a joint production with, I think it was the Ministry of Health, so that was the first time I was speaking about sickle cell on a public platform.
How did you get into that? Was that something that you wanted to do, or were you contacted? And
Noel, the director, called me, who is a friend, and he's like, I find your story to be interesting based on your book, and I'd love to talk about it some more. And I'm like, sure.
So the book was like the first step for you of sharing. Okay.
I think I grew to be comfortable in my skin. So I think it started before that, but I officially started advocating in 2019. I have it, and it is what it is. So I'm going to talk about it because other persons need to know that we're a community.
Right.
It's hard, but I think knowing that somebody else is like you and you're not alone, I think if I had that in high school, I wouldn't feel so isolated.
Right.
And so that's how it really started for me.
So would you say that you had to get comfortable and confident within yourself before kind of expressing, being open and sharing that? And so since then, 2019, you have been doing lots of things. Yeah. So what have you done so far kind of in Jamaica? What things do you have coming up? Okay,
so before, we would have been doing interviews, talks. When Sickle Cell Awareness Month comes, we do campaigns, television campaigns, print campaigns, stuff like that. But in 2021, I launched an initiative, Warriors Unite, which has turned into a whole movement. And we gave care packages to 236 sickle cell patients across the island. And this year, we're doing it again, but we're adding some new things. We're adding a podcast to that brand. We're adding a blood drive and some other surprises.
Good. Okay, that's cool. So I just want to also talk about you. So I know we've spoken about sickle cell and all this stuff, but one of the things that I love is when warriors are here living with sickle cell, but even though they have it, I don't like to use the term despite, because I feel like it's with, you know, we have sickle cell, but you're still doing amazing things. You've got a whole career, and just, I want you to kind of just share some of your wins so that we can celebrate you. So like, tell us about you. What do you do?
That's a lot. Yeah,
because there's so much, which is good.
So I'm an entertainment executive, which means I manage talents, manage productions, manage events.
Guys, she's a big deal, you know. Big deal.
That's a lot of work. On top of that, I have a podcast on my own. I do a lot.
How do you manage everything you do with living with sickle cell as well?
Management, time management. We're limited. You and I know how limited we are. We don't have a lot of energy to do anything. And so you have to schedule every single thing. If I want personal time, I have to schedule it. If I want rest time, I have to schedule it. I have to schedule drinking water because everything is important.
Right.
And so I get by doing a lot on the very little that I have. I've implemented measures that would make me comfortable. I don't stretch myself too thin. I know when it is time to stop. I have a hard time stopping.
I was going to say how easy it is when you know that you're at the edge and it's like, let me just push, because I struggle with that and I will sometimes run myself to the ground. But
yeah, but we also know that stress is a trigger for us. And stress comes in many forms. If your body is exhausted, your body is exhausted. And I do not like hospitals, so I'd prefer to rest than to end up in a hospital.
So you know even though you push yourself, you know your limits.
I know my limits. And it's something that I remind myself of. I am made with limitations.
Right.
And so I work around it with management.
Relationships. Do you think that sickle cell has impacted your relationship, love life, in any way, shape or form? Or is it something that you kind of just, it is what it is? Because I feel like you have that kind of attitude anyway where it's like you don't let other people's opinions impact the way you live, which that's how I am as well.
I don't think I've ever been in an experience where because I have sickle cell, it's affected my relationships.
Right.
Not with friends, not with intimate relationships, not with family. I've had a pretty good relationship generally experience. I've had a pretty good experience where that is concerned. But if someone has a problem, it's something I say right off the bat because sickle cell affects every aspect. It affects us needing to know if the partner has a trait, because if you have a trait, I could love you from now till next year, it's not gonna work. Yeah. That's the reality of it. Personally, I don't want to have children, so I have to have that conversation right out the jump, so later on we don't fall in love and then you expect me to have 5 children because I don't want one.
Sorry, it's just the way you're like, straight.
Yeah, I need to, it has to be that straight up. And I'm not saying that I'm not open to surrogacy or adopting, but none not coming out of my womb. And so I need to put that on the table.
And is that mainly because you don't want to pass on the trait?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do not think... Sickle cell is hard. We know how hard it is. We know that. And now we're finding out that the trait is not just the trait. The trait has some complications that we have. Persons go from having a dormant trait to being dead overnight. And as advocates, we know the details of that. It would be very dumb for me to have that knowledge and still continue to pass it. No. I don't want to pass it on.
Okay. So you guys make sure you have to check out her podcast. Where is it? What's it called? Where can...
Warriors Unite. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Spotify. And it's going to be on Apple. Okay, guys. So make sure you check out Warriors Unite. Danni, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. You know it's always a pleasure. It will be. We're in Jamaica.